So I need to insert users and products into my database with Dapper, and I'm running my application for the 5th time because I get runtime exceptions that my SQL is wrong. Oh, I see the error. I have misspelled my column name. Now it should work. Hi everyone. I'm sure when using Dapper you have run into this kind of problems. Then you need to write a lot of boilerplate code to perform your SQL commands, and you don't have any time safety while writing your SQL. You can misspell, miss, or write a wrong column name, and you will only know that something goes wrong in the runtime. Today I want you to introduce to an amazing library that will allow you to perform your entity mapping in the code, just like you do with EF Core. You will install a NuGet package called ZDapper Plus. Let's install it to our infrastructure project. Here is a typical method you use to insert a product. You write and insert into values, pass one or a list of projects, and insert them to the database. With Dapper Plus library, you have a set of extension methods on your connection. You can use a single insert async method. Also, you can use asynchronous version if needed. And this method will write the needed SQL for you to perform an insert command. But how does Dapper Plus library know how to insert a product into your database? What SQL needs to be written? So we will explore a few ways how we can configure the mapping. First, when using this code as is, Dapper Plus will perform auto mapping. It will intelligently discover how to map your entities automatically. So it will explore your product entity, what properties does it have, and how to write a SQL. It will look for a product or a products table in the database. It will use an ID column as your identity column and will match your properties by name. Also, when you use underscores or dots in your table columns in the database, it will try to remove these characters and match them to the properties. Let's explore our database. In our database, our products table sits in the schema, and I use a lower snake case naming for the column names, for schemas, and for table names. So how can we configure this in Dapper Plus? In our infrastructure project, let's create a new file and call it Dapper Plus Mapping. This class will be static. We will have one static method. Let's call it map. And we can use here the Dapper Plus Manager class. And we will specify the entity. Let's say we want to configure the product. We can specify the table name we want to use here. I will use a schema name and a table name, and we can call the automap method that will perform the rest of the mapping automatically. In the program.cs, after initializing our database, let's call this map method. Let's instantiate the instance of a repository. Let's generate one random product. I have a database seed service that generates products, and we will select the first one. This method uses the bogus library to generate a realistic products. and we will call the repository method add with Dapper Plus async and pass our product here. Let's put a breakpoint and run our application. Let's execute the insert command, and we get an error. It says that we can't insert a null into the stock quantity column. Okay, it means that Dapper Plus can't automatically map to this kind of column, and we need to help. We can write the map, we can provide our stock quantity, and specify our column name. We need to specify the same mapping for our created add columns and updated add. Let's see. We also need an isActive column to specify. Let's test it again. Alright, this time our command executed successfully. As you can see, the product was successfully inserted. In the Dapper Plus, you can specify either all the columns, or you can override selected columns and use automap and allow Dapper Plus to figure it out automatically. This is a Fluent API syntax. Also, you can use data annotations if you prefer. So here we can use our regular data annotation attributes. We can specify our table name and the schema. Here you can specify the key and the database generated identity column for identifier, and for columns that use the lowercase snake case, you can specify the column attribute and specify the stock quantity in the lowercase. The same goes with other columns. So you can use either data annotations or a Fluent syntax. Personally, I'm a much bigger fan of a Fluent syntax. It's easier to read and doesn't pollute your entities with attributes. And the main benefit is that you can specify only few columns and let Dapper Plus to figure out it automatically by using the automap method. Here is how you can specify the full mapping for all of our entities. So we specify the identity column. It's useful when you don't use ID and you use the custom name for the column. And you can also specify the ignore fields. For example, when we have a product card, we use a list of card items and a navigation to a user. We can ignore these fields in the Dapper Plus manager. The other way to configure mapping is through Dapper Plus context. In the Dapper Plus manager class, we have a default context which you can use to configure your entities. In the same way, just as we use them here, it will configure entities on the global level. Also, you can configure the mapping on the local level when you perform an operation. For example, here we are performing an insert with Dapper Plus, and we can create a context, new Dapper Plus context, and provide a connection string for it. And now we can create a mapping from this context. We can specify the product, specify all the columns required. We can use the automap. We have configured the mapping. We can pass the context to this method, or we can use the single insert method from the context instead. The third way to use a context is that you can create your own context class if you want to. Let's name it as product context. We will inherit it from Dapper Plus context. We will need a constructor and pass the connection to the Dapper Plus base context. And here in the constructor, you can specify the mapping using the base message from the context. And in the repository, you can create a product context, and you won't need to specify this inline mapping here. But the Dapper Plus doesn't end with just a single insert. It also has an update, a delete, and a merge method that performs an upsert. And the most complex method is single insert async that will insert a new row to the database. If it doesn't exist, it will perform a merge when the row exists, and it will delete all the other rows that are not present here. And also, the Dapper Plus offers a premium method called bulk insert, bulk update, bulk delete, bulk merge, and bulk synchronize that perform the operations on the list of your entities, which is pretty fast. I can show you just a quick benchmark that compares the performance of simple insert of 10,000 of records with Dapper and using bulk insert method from Dapper Plus. We will switch to release mode and run our benchmarks. Alright, the results are back. Let's see what we have here. With Dapper, it takes almost 7 seconds to insert 10,000 records, and with Dapper Plus, it takes only 300 milliseconds. Why does it happen? All because even if you write insert into and use values with a list of products, Dapper still sends each request as a separate round trip to the database. And these are the benchmarks when I have the database and my application running on the same machine. And when you have a separate database server, the performance with Dapper will only decrease. You can use all the single write methods and utility create table and truncate table for free when using Dapper Plus, and for using the bulk premium methods, you need to purchase a license for commercial usage. However, this library provides a free trial that you can use for 1 month to test if this library meets your project needs. And if the 1 month is not enough, you can extend the free trial by downloading a new package at the beginning of the next month. Thank you for your attention.